Good evening and welcome to the Carnegie Town Hall. This meeting of the Planning Commission will begin with a few introductory remarks. The City of Sioux Falls Planning Commission serves as an advisory board to the City Council. It is the responsibility of the Planning Commission to consider and make recommendations on land use and zoning matters. Actions taken tonight on conditional use permits are final unless appealed to the City Council in writing within 5 days. And any actions taken tonight on final development plan design review or minor amendments are final. Any recommendations made on preliminary subdivision plan requests tonight will be referred to the City Council for final actions at the third council meeting of this month or at the first council meeting of next month if associated with a zoning or major amendment. Any recommendations made on rezoning requests, major amendments, future land use amendments, or ordinance amendments tonight will be referred to the City Council for final action at the first council meeting of next month. Council meetings are held at Carnegie Town Hall and are televised. The Planning Commission will first approve the consent agenda and then the regular agenda. In order to place certain non-controversial items on the Commission's consent agenda, Planning staff and the Planning Commission apply the following criteria. First, the request conforms with the Shape Sioux Falls 2035 Comprehensive Plan. Second, Planning staff recommends approval of the request. Third, there are no audience members present or written comments received in opposition to the request. And fourth, the application meets all conditions and requirements of the Sioux Falls zoning ordinance. For the regular agenda, the following normal public hearing procedure will be followed for each item. By first requesting planning staff to present a brief report on that item. Second, the petitioner or a representative will be requested to come forward and make a statement or answer questions. After the petitioner has spoken, anyone from the audience who wishes to address the agenda item shall be recognized. Then the Planning Commission will discuss the matter further and take appropriate action. We ask that anyone addressing the Planning Commission move to the podium microphone and identify themselves for the record. Please limit your comments to less than 5 minutes. As a courtesy to everyone here tonight, we ask that you please either turn off or silence your electronic devices. This meeting is being telecast on CityLink and will be rebroadcast Friday at 7 p.m., Saturday at 10 a.m., and Wednesday at 1 a.m. Thank you for your cooperation. Good evening. Welcome to Carnegie Town Hall. I call to order this regular meeting of the City Planning Commission. At this time, the Planning Commission will approve the consent and regular agenda. The consent agenda items this evening are: number 1, approval of the November 7th, 2012 minutes of the regular meeting. Number 2, plats. Number 3 will be a rezone in the RC Recreation Conservation District to the RS2 Residential District for allowed uses at 2821 West 69th Street. Item 4 will be a rezone I-1, which is Heavy Industrial District, to the C3 Central Business District for allowed uses at 322 East 8th Street. Item 5 is a conditional use permit in the C2 General Commercial District to allow motor vehicle display and sales at 2108 West Burnside Avenue. Number 6 is a conditional use permit in the C2 General Commercial District to allow motor vehicle display and sales at 2203 West 12th Street. Number 7 is a conditional use permit in the C2 General Commercial District to allow motor vehicle display and sales at 1106 East 3rd Street. Number 8 is a conditional use permit in the C4 Planned Commercial District to allow a church at 3201 South Shirley Avenue. 9 is a conditional use permit in the I-1 Light Industrial District to allow a retail business at 1320 North Cliff Avenue. Item 10 is a conditional use permit in the RS1 Residential District to allow preschool and daycare at 5000 South Western. Item 11 is a conditional use permit in the C2 General Commercial District to allow a preschool and daycare at 4060 South Grange Avenue. Number 12 is a minor amendment to Subarea A, Willow Creek Plan Development District to allow parking in the side yard at 901 South Willow Creek Place. Are there any objections from the audience to any of the items listed on the consent agenda? Are there any objections from the Planning Commission members to any of the items listed on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I would request a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that motion.
We have a motion. Would there be a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor will signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed? Motion passes. The item on the consent agenda have now been approved. Any audience members present on the consent agenda items are free to leave if you so choose. Is there a motion to approve the regular agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the regular agenda. Would there be a second?
Second.
All in favor will signify by saying yes.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. We will move to item number 13 on our regular agenda.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. My name is Dave Loveland, and I am with the Community Development Department. Here to speak with you tonight about a proposal for TIF District number 18, which is part of the Uptown to the Falls. And members of the development team are here with Lloyd Companies, and then other members of the Community Development Department are here as well tonight to speak to this. What we wanted to do is, item number 13 is revised boundary from the boundary that you saw last month. And item number 14 is the project plan for TIF 18. So what you see is the boundary above, and you will need separate votes on those, on each of those items. So
you're going to present it all together, Dave, and then we'll just vote on them separately.
Yep, I'll present it all in one. The history of the site, as you may know, is it's a formal rail site, and it was part of the Phillips to the Falls project. It's been city-owned since the relocation of some of the rail tracks and some of the cleanup efforts since the mid-2000s. A request for proposals was sent out in 2007, and the award was for the Uptown project, which was granted to Lloyd Companies at that time. To support that award, Tax Increment District number 8 was created in 2007. As a result, some of the components of that TIF district had not been realized, and so that district was dissolved in 2011. And Tax Increment number 12 was created in 2011, which focused on the properties along Main Avenue. Now, this project is Tax Increment District number 18, which will focus along Phillips Avenue. If you could go next slide. You'll see the Phillips Avenue extension. This is just an aerial for your information on what the property looked like before we were able to, with the assistance of many partners, get some of this cleaned up. Next slide, Steve. The project that we're talking about tonight is a proposal to develop a apartment and loft building, 5 stories in height along Phillips Avenue. Be about 100,000 square feet. It'll be a mixed-use building with retail and commercial along the first floor and residential above. The development, like I said, the development plan is for a mixed-use project. The soil is a concern on this area. It's contaminated and difficult to develop site, which is the request for, which is the result of the request for the TIF. And in addition, there are public infrastructure improvements that will focus on drainage and 3rd and 4th Street upgrades. It's anticipated that TIF participation will be fulfilled within about 18 years. And so if you could go to the next slide, Steve. The financial projections of the district, the current assessed valuation of the properties included in the district is $0, which means that there are no property taxes being paid on this land right now. The total investment of the site would be about $20.7 million, of which $4.1 million are eligible project costs. And the expected reimbursement of the site, the developer reimbursement of the proceeds would be $3.8 million. The total increment value is $4.1 million over 18 years, which basically means that that's the amount of tax dollars over the 18 years that this project will generate. That's based upon an assessed valuation of $9.3 million. TIF 18 considerations. Incremental financing can offset excessive site costs, which we have on this site. Proceeds will assist in costs associated with infrastructure improvements for area-wide drainage, 3rd Street pedestrian improvements, and 4th Street improvements. Environmental cleanup costs, including soil remediation and monitoring and treatment of dewatering issues. It also helps to fund some of the associated costs with financing and legal. Allowable TIF expenses will be financed up front by the developer and owner, and then the reimbursement occurs through TIF proceeds. The project and improvements meet the 2035 comprehensive plan and the 2015 downtown plan. The TIF plan is drafted in compliance with state statute and reviewed by external legal and financial experts. The schedule for this TIF would be December 5th, 2012 is obviously today, which is this plan and boundary are before you. And then this would proceed to the City Council, assuming your approval on December 18th. And then assuming their approval would be effective in mid-January of 2013. Just to reiterate, the authority of the Planning Commission comes from South Dakota Codified Law 11-9. That Section 4 is for Planning Commission shall recommend creation of a boundary, and Section 13 is that Planning Commission shall adopt a project plan. So that concludes staff presentation. I can certainly answer any additional questions that you have, and then as I noted, the developer here is to answer any of his specific questions too. So,
Thank you, David.
thank you.
Questions for David? Commissioners?
Just a point of clarification, Dave, for people that may be watching. Last month, we voted on a boundary for this TIF that included a site to the south that is no longer part of it. So when we vote on item number 13, we'll be clarifying that we'll be voting on this smaller.
That's correct. Yep, the revised
That'll
boundary.
be
Yep.
lesser in size.
David, this originally had a TIF put on it in '07,
That's right.
and it died a natural death. Apparently, these are good for 4 years.
Yeah, yeah, 4 to 5 years is what they're good for. Is the expenditures of TIF proceeds must be expended within the 5-year time frame of the creation. So, yep.
So if we approve the TIF this evening, that's good for this particular site for the next
5 years. So the project would have to be completed and all proceeds reimbursed by January of 2018.
project would need to be completed within that time
Yep.
frame.
Well,
not
the
start.
proceed, any of the elements that are, being reimbursed through the TIF proceeds would have to be completed by then. Yep.
When it reads here, Planning Commission authority, Planning Commission shall adopt a project plan. Is that what you're showing us this evening, a sketch of the building and how it's going to look? Or?
Yep, and the plan that was presented to you in your packets, this item is the project plan. So that identifies costs and, the taxing revenue and things like that. Yep.
It qualifies up to $4.1 million.
That's right.
The developer is requesting 3.8.
That's right.
Is the TIF then for 3.8?
Yeah, the TIF is 3.8. What we were doing is showing you that there are multiple eligible expenses that qualify under statute for reimbursement.
But to come back and ask for more than the 3.8, would that start the process over again as far as we're concerned?
Yeah, it may. This plan allows expenditures of up to $4.1 million, but the
Plan allows it.
Yep, but the developer's agreement that will be worked out will be about $3.8 million. Yep, based upon their request. So are you saying there will not be more than $3.8 million? That's right. On this particular TIF? Yep, that's right. Unless brought back to us? That's right.
Okay. Any other questions for David? Seeing none, thank you, David. Good job.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here this evening that would like to address this issue? Or discuss this issue?
Petitioner.
Well, I believe, David, you are the petitioner on this particular.
Yeah,
Okay. Anyone else like to speak to this?
Craig Lloyd, 101 South Reed, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Lloyd Companies. Here to answer questions, and if you have any, we'd be happy to try to address them.
Would there be any questions for the developer here this evening? Craig, we've asked you a lot of questions, I think, at the last meeting. We have been digging into TIFs, spending more than a little time with it, and we've been getting an awful lot of good advice from a lot of different people, and I think a lot of our questions, quite frankly, have been answered. I personally had a whole list of questions that I was going to have for you, but in the past 30 days, they've all been answered, so thank you. It looks like a good project, and I did want to say this one was very closely looked at, not because of you or the project. It's a project we'd like to see go. I think our questions were more about TIFs. We're starting to see more and more of them, and we just want to have a good, clear understanding how these work and how they're going to work going forward.
Well, I want to thank you and Community Development for working with us and asking a lot of questions. This is a serious issue to us and the citizens of Sioux Falls, and I've tried to answer all the questions the best we can. And the staff has done an excellent job drilling us, so you weren't the only one kind of going after me, Kenny. But they've asked a lot of good questions, and we're excited about this. It's taken us longer than probably we all wanted to, but we kind of had a little bump in the road in 8, 9, 10, and hopefully we can get over that. So thank you very much, and thanks the council and commission. Would it be
fair to ask you to give us a little bit of a time frame? Do you have a time frame in mind? It looks like you've got 5 years to complete it.
We close on the land. I guess the scheduled closing is the 27th of December, and so I'm more than committed. And we hope to start sometime in May or June. Sweet. And this is a big project. It takes a lot of planning, design work, engineering, but we're kind of used to that in the downtown market. So,
how long do you anticipate it to take to get the project built?
I don't want to tell you that my staff will take advantage of me, but realistically, it'll be 14 months.
14?
14 months.
Thank you. Any other questions for Craig?
Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here this evening that would like to address items 13 and 14? If not, Chair would entertain a motion.
I move approval, but I have a question before that. Are we voting one at a time, or?
Yes.
Okay, 13 first, then. I move approval of item 13.
We have a motion for item number 13. Would there be a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All in favor will signify by saying yes.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Item number 14. Chair would entertain a motion on item number 14.
I guess I can do it again. I move approval of item 14, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion. Would there be a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Meredith?
Mr. Chair, this comment relates to both items 13 and 14. And I've been on the Planning Commission now for 9.5 years. It's gone quickly and will end soon. But when I first started on the Planning Commission, we rarely saw TIF districts come to the Planning Commission. We see more now, and certainly they're involved in some very exciting projects, and I particularly like to see this method of development assistance occur when the projects are downtown, because in the 12 years I've lived in Sioux Falls, the downtown has changed dramatically for the better. I think we've all learned that the City of Sioux Falls doesn't have a lot of tools to work with when it comes to development assistance. It's really the TIF and the tax abatement that they can bring to bear in making some of these happen. And so, again, it's a good project. I think this is a great method by which developers can make things happen in the downtown and certainly around Sioux Falls. I'm also familiar with some of the issues that the development in the downtown area have begun to battle with in terms of contaminated soils. The fact that our history in Sioux Falls is considerable. When you dig holes along the river, you're finding all sorts of things, and a lot of that soil now has to be taken to the landfill, and there's a fee to dump the contaminated soil. And any water that is a part of these development projects also has to be treated before it can go back into the city system. So I know that this project in particular will encounter some of that, and certainly TIF funds are necessary and appropriate for that type of work. So I would again say this is a good use of TIF. Thank you.
Thank you, Meredith. Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor will signify by saying yes.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. I have been asked to remind everybody that our next meeting will be January 9th. And I think that maybe has to do a little bit with, I don't have a calendar in front of me, but probably January 1st. So it's going to be a long week for us, but the next meeting will be January 9th.
Mr. Chair, I make a recommendation for dismissal. Adjournment.
For what?
Adjournment.
We have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor will signify by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed? Motion
Point of
passes.
privilege. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, everybody.
Thank you, guys.